our vision is to just like sell this idea of building for Bitcoiners to application developers. They want to see demand, they want to see functionality, they want to see UX, they want to offer this to Bitcoiners. That's like where the most value lies.
Welcome, Citrea founders, Ekrem and Orkun. Thank you so much for being here. Also sponsors of the show. So thank you so much for that. Very excited to have you here. I want to give you guys, just to start off, opportunity to introduce yourselves, but sort of my, kind of brief introduction that I always share when I give you guys is sort of leading sort of technologist in the BitVM bridging Bitcoin rollup space. My personal opinion, and other people can fight with me about this, is that you really don't have, you've maybe one other really serious competitor, but you guys are pretty much at the top of the heap of a trend, for lack of a better word, where you're, getting a lot of kind of people rushing in, taking VC money to do this BitVM thing. And you guys are really, at the bleeding edge is really the way that I would describe you for a lot of reasons. And I'm excited to kind of get into some of what those are. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and just sort of share, who you are, maybe a little bit of what you were doing before you started this company.
Maybe I can start. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO. My name is Orkun. It's a bit hard to spell because I'm Turkish. But I'm actually an engineer. I did developments for years since I get into the college. But at Citrea, my role is more the BD growth, marketing side of things. So I've worked with our ecosystem teams, people building on Citrea, because Citrea is the first to really develop on Bitcoin. Itself is not an application, but it's like a platform for applications. So most of my time I spent with developers building on Citrea, helping them with go-to-market strategy, product advices, and fundraising, marketing, everything in general, besides my day-to-day work of Citrea, obviously.
Makes sense. Ekrem, how about you?
Hi, I'm Ekrem, one of the co-founders as well. I'm also chief scientist of Chainway Labs. I mostly work on the bridge side, BitVM, like the transactions of bridges, and then implementing it mostly.
Just for clarity also, Chainway Labs is the company, and then is Citrea the implementation of the rollup? Or...
Yeah, exactly. Citrea is like the name of the product, but the legal entity is Chainway Labs. And when we started this journey, there wasn't any Citrea name. So some very OG people know us as like Chainway team. But Citrea was basically the name of product we revealed like a year and a half ago, I guess.
But when you started Chaincode Labs, you were very clear on what you were going to try to build. I mean, am I getting that right? Or did Chaincode Labs have experimentation before this BitVM roll-up situation occurred?
No, it's Chainway Labs.
Chainway Labs.
Yes, Chaincode is just.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's also a Bitcoin company.
That was just a slip of the tongue.
Yes, it's also a Bitcoin company, so it makes
Chainway Labs,
exactly.
Not to be confused with Chaincode Labs.
When we started, actually, we weren't even like doing something specifically on Bitcoin. We all know each other from college. We went to like same year with Ekrem and our CTO Asad. We were in all computer science at Boğaziçi University, the top university in Turkey. And then we all four of us got together and said, okay, we want to just like build something in crypto. But
in crypto, broadly. It didn't have like a core thesis at that time.
And then we said, okay, we will just like get together, quit our part-time, full-time jobs when we were in college, and then we will just do something.
When was this? Like, how long ago was this?
I think it was exactly 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys are a young team doing some pretty ambitious
When we started, we were 21. So
holy
it was
crap. Okay.
Yeah, we were still in college. Haven't finished. I still haven't finished. But anyways,
were you guys just like the biggest nerds in college? Like, were you guys just like you just nailed it on the engineering? You were just like super hyper superstars 3 years ago, or am I?
I don't know. Like for I finished college. Like he will probably drop out.
Oh, yeah.
But for the last years, I was only going to exams. Like, and that's it.
Were you guys obsessed with Bitcoin when you were
in
college
general,
and high school?
Smart contracts and like the blockchain concept.
Oh, yeah, you're Ethereum people. You were.
Actually, he started like cryptography, I guess, more like mathematics side of things.
Okay.
I was more like coming from web background.
Okay.
And my first job was like an NFT company on Ethereum. And
that was your first job?
First Web3 crypto job, I would say.
Like right out of school, basically.
Yes. So I was doing all like the front ends, like regular Web2 stuff. And then this company said, okay, like we have this crypto thing that you need to develop front end, and they were paying well. I said, okay. And then I started doing integrations and realized like there is no backend that does payments. There is no credit card page. There is no kind of payment page. People just click buttons and send money around. And then I discovered how this happens. Like, okay, what's the infrastructure then? Then I realized there is like a blockchain called Ethereum. I always know about like Ethereum and Bitcoin as assets. My friends were trading back in then, but I had nothing to do with it. And then I realized it's actually not just like an asset that you trade, but it's actually like a financial platform.
The network. Yeah, they're networks.
It's a network. And then I got introduced to Bitcoin concept. I read the white paper. I got very impressed. I researched about consensus a bit, but I was always on the application level, not the theory of.
And you were equally interested in both Bitcoin and Ethereum. I mean, I think that's something that is sort of unique about you two, is that you had a lot of experience with Ethereum when some Bitcoin developers really have none.
Yes. I think our first thing that we did at Chainway Labs was a privacy tool on Ethereum, basically like a private payment tool that people can deposit money into a black box and they can do payments. And if they need compliance, they can just privately show that they're not OFAC sanctioned, but they don't reveal anything about their addresses. So it was actually like the only practical privacy app on Ethereum back in then that was working, because it was after sanctions by OFAC.
So this privacy product, payments, was the first Chainway Labs product, essentially?
Kind of, yeah. It was called Proof of Innocence. Also, like Railgun implemented it as well. We implemented for them, and now it's used in production. Actually, there was like a big hack happened, and then hackers tried to use Railgun to basically like launder that. And then with Proof of Innocence, they couldn't prove their innocence, so they revealed their addresses, basically.
I see. Okay, so you're kind of putting your toe into this development field. You're working primarily in the Ethereum ecosystem at this time. I mean, is that accurate?
I would say mostly ZK. I was nerd sniped by the ZK.
Oh, you were nerd sniped by ZKs. Yeah. Okay.
And also privacy. Like when I first read about Tornado Cash, it was like amazing. Like it uses ZK. It uses like it gives you full privacy. Marco trees.
This is actually an important thing I want to contextualize you as characters around. Did you care about privacy? I mean, so many people don't. I mean, did you care about the monetary system? Like, what about crypto do you care about, or did you care about 3 years ago?
Of course, yeah. I was always in the camp that, like, if you don't have privacy, like, mass adoption won't happen. Like, if you want to use this crypto in everyday payments, etc., like, there needs to be privacy. Or otherwise, when you're spending your money, you basically, like, doxing yourself. So
not everyone feels that way, though. That's not necessarily obvious to everyone. Why do you think that that's obvious to you? Why do you feel so strongly about privacy specifically?
Personally, whenever I do transaction on any blockchain, I feel like, oh, they will find this transaction at some point. So
you just knew that immediately. You were like, these blockchains are traceable. This is like a government psyop. Like, if we don't figure this privacy thing out, this is going to be bad. You just intuitively thought that right off the bat.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Like for me, whenever I ask my friends to just like send some money to me on any blockchain, they always send through Binance. Like they send their money to Binance and they send to me.
Spin it. Yeah.
And then I was like wondering why they're doing it. Like they could just send through their wallets. And then I asked them and they said, if I just send to my wallet, you will see my address and then you will see how much money I have. So I use Binance as a privacy tool.
Exactly.
So that I only dox to my Binance. And I was shocked. Like, this is literally true, and this is what like most people in crypto do.
Which means that they're paying fees for the privilege of privacy, by the way.
Yeah, it's not just fees. You are doxing, like you are giving your passport to
KYC.
Binance to use the mixer, and that's like a very stupid thing.
Yeah.
And it can get hacked as well, like we've seen Coinbase.
Right, it's not a super effective mixer.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay, so you're caring about privacy. You get nerd sniped by ZKs. So, like, you're in the Ethereum ecosystem, I imagine, like learning about ZKs. For the most part, that's where the conversation was happening, right? This was, 3 years? So we're talking about like 2022?
Yes.
Okay, so you're nerd sniped by ZKs. You're learning about ZKs. You're thinking about what to build there. And then what happens?
And then we built this product. And meanwhile, Ordinals came on Bitcoin. And our CTO, Esad, one day came to office. We had like very small 5-person office in Istanbul. And he said, like, there's an NFTs on Bitcoin, and there's only 100 of them. I think this was
Bitcoin Rocks.
Yeah, like just like 100 random tickpots or whatever, like on Bitcoin. It was very
Oh,
like,
it was
I
like
think,
the first 100 inscriptions.
yeah. And he said just like there's like 100 inscriptions. Let's just like inscribe some stuff. And we said, okay, like what is it? Like how do you inscribe? How we can actually do this, right? Because we previously thought we always like Bitcoin as the blockchain and as the ideology. But when we look into the script while we were developing ZK and Ethereum, we realized, okay, there's not much room to develop stuff here, right? And the
You
tooling
didn't
wasn't there.
realize. Yeah. Or
We
you're
didn't
just like, it's
realize.
limited. Yeah.
It's limited. And already people built like what they could build, like Lightning, basic payments, maybe some CoinJoin stuff, but that's all.
Right.
And then once the Ordinals came up, we said, okay, this is like a good business opportunity, because what you need to do, like to inscribe an Ordinals, was get a Bitcoin node, set up it, load your wallet, set up the Ord software, all through CLIs. And this is not for like everyone, right? It's only for developers. And then we said, okay, let's just build a wallet that allows people to inscribe whatever they want or just transfer ordinals. And we launched a second wallet after Unicet.
Can I ask a question for clarification? So, like, why did you think? So you said, oh, Bitcoin's the sort of like pet rock, right? Like the classic, like Ethereum sort of point of view. There's nothing to do. Ordinals happens. Was there a reason why you felt like coming and building on Bitcoin was actually important rather than just staying on Ethereum?
I think it was just like, okay, if people can actually put images on Bitcoin, I'm sure in 1 year we could do much more than this. It was kind of that moment for us, because like previously everyone think Bitcoin is just for just like doing this payment thing without any covenants, without anything. And then all these people came up and said, okay, now we can put data and you can trade it, trade the digital artifacts, whatever you call them. And this was okay. Let's just like not try to find an innovative way to use it. Let's just build and get the tooling done, because then on top of that tooling, we could build more unique things that is more helpful to Bitcoin.
You thought like, okay, the design space is opening up basically. And did you feel like, okay, no, Ben, also, by the way, if we can do it on Bitcoin, we should, because this is the better money? Like, was that obvious to you? Yeah.
It was very obvious.
You were like, okay. All right. So you start playing around with like an Ordinals marketplace. That was the original idea?
It was
a wallet.
Yeah.
A wallet.
Yeah.
This was like pre-Xverse.
Yeah. Xverse was stacks only, I think, back then. It was literally like the 10 days up. We launched 10 days after Unicet, I guess. It was like something like it.
Okay.
And then we got around like 20,000 users back then.
What was it called?
Ordinal Safe.
Ordinal. Oh, I remember.
Yeah, it was
that.
Like I think we are still the only, we shut down the wallet by them, but we were the only one that support trustless inscription through wallets. Like you could just like use your own address to inscribe. We'd be like, instead of sending money to someone and they inscribe and send you back.
I don't think people realize that that's how it would work.
Yeah.
Like you had to, people were literally like sending like into the abyss, fully trusted to get inscriptions. Okay, so trustlessness was like a key feature for you in your ethos of building from day one.
Yes.
Okay. So you make this Ordinal Safe wallet.
And meanwhile, Ekrem was still working on, I think, the privacy thing. We were just like getting things production ready on the side. So we were doing like these two things at the same time. Majority of the team was on Ordinal Safe. We started hiring people to build this. Ekrem was working with his small team on the privacy side. And once they completed it, we were thinking about, okay, what we could build more, because now we have users, now we have a working wallet, it's stable, it's secure. So let's just like ideate more. And then we said, okay, what if we could actually like trade these things in wallet, for example, or batch trade things, or create an order book without doing all this off-chain coordination. And the moment we were talking is just like, maybe we can use ZK to do all of these and prove it. And then we just post proof to Bitcoin. And that becomes like the same as ordinals. Someone will just pick the proof, verify it, and verify the trade.
What happened then? I was going to say, what conclusion did you come to in that research?
I think like then after you came up with the rollup idea.
Because we found this idea and we said, okay, we are brilliant. Like we found like a holy grail of Bitcoin. We can just do all the programmability with just ZK proofs and inscriptions.
Wait, back up though. this is difficult to do, right? I mean, like this is like verifying like a ZK on Bitcoin. Was the idea to verify a ZK on Bitcoin?
The thing was, people would verify things on their client instead of Bitcoin verifying it, because it's also how inscriptions work, right? You just put some data. Bitcoin doesn't know the data, but you know the data because you see it.
This is the most important innovation of ordinals, in my opinion, is the idea of like an index or off-chain.
Yeah.
Like that is actually like the core innovation.
Yes. And then once we got this idea, I started getting some feedback from my friends, mostly on Ethereum land, and like working on rollups and ZK technology. And once we talked about this idea, they said, like, this is a very primitive rollup. And I said, like, how? And they said, if you can just like expand this into what and like not, and then you can get a proper rollup working on Bitcoin. And then the moment said, okay, like this is actually big. And then
at that point, let's just slow down because this is like really important and like interesting. So, okay. So you're like thinking, okay, well, we could verify this data, the ZK data off chain, and then like somehow prove it on chain. Like that's still a difficult problem to solve, obviously. Like, how were you thinking about like how you even get some kind of proof on chain at that time? And this is, correct me if I'm wrong, before BitVM.
Yeah, this is before BitVM.
Okay, so then how were you thinking about that problem at the time?
I think for us, engineering is not a problem. So it's maybe like too much, but if that's something we think is doable, it's just like maybe another month or
another
year.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we will figure, because that's what we did like for the last 1.5 years.
This is why you are successful and like as like ambitious and like bullish as you are, is because you take the attitude of we'll figure it out when so many people are like honestly kind of jaded, I think, in this space.
Yeah, we could spend more time on research and like trying to figure out. We said, okay, we will just like start with something very small and then try to expand from there. And we will figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's like how we basically started Citrea. This was 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
2 years ago this time, actually, like in May,
hilarious.
I guess.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. So we'll figure it out. We'll figure out how to get the data on chain and it'll be fine.
Yeah. And then...
So were there like specific things that you were ideating there on the engineering side? I mean, like from your perspective, like how was the figuring it out going?
I mean, at that time, I was mostly concerned with like these ZK proof systems. They were not this mature. Like we didn't have ZK VMs. And I remember I was arguing with Orkun like, oh, ZK VMs, they are slow. And at some point, I also agreed with Orkun like this ZK will evolve, and then we will be able to prove anything we want easily without having to do like advanced cryptography or like implementing your own proof systems. And yeah, it's now happening. We can prove something.
Very quickly.
Did you? I mean, you couldn't have, a thought that BitVM would happen.
Yeah, we couldn't.
So were you just thinking like proofs themselves, like literally proofs themselves, would become like small enough or like compressed enough that you would then somehow be able to like inscribe them? Was that sort of the assumption?
No.
I think the initial assumption was we could build like some off-chain consensus on proving, so that it's like still half multisig, half ZK rollup construction. Okay. And we were still doing research on like how we can verify proofs on Bitcoin. And one of my friends said, oh, like I know Bcash people found a way to do it. And we spoke with Bcash people, but their script was like, I don't know, a gigabyte basically. Like you cannot execute on Bitcoin and whatnot. So we always encountered some limitation of Bitcoin on verifying ZK proofs. And one day, I think it was November, the BitVM paper release. I think I sent the paper to our Telegram chat.
Yeah.
And then you can tell how we went to Amsterdam and everything.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, we went to Bitcoin Amsterdam. We met with Robin.
Just for this. Like we went to Bitcoin Amsterdam to just met with Robin and ask a bunch of questions about BitVM.
When BitVM like hit the scene, like when you first read the paper, what was that moment like? Were you like, oh my God, this is it? Like
that was my like second nerd snipe. Like
of course.
Yeah. Like I was thinking all the time, okay, this is amazing. And like I was trying to understand it fully. At first, like it's hard to understand.
It's hard.
Yes. Like I remember I always think like, oh, okay, now I understand BitVM. But then we started like implementing it like as a toy implementation. And whenever we are like encountering a problem in the implementation, I looked at the white paper again. Okay, then I understand. Oh, okay, we do this like this way.
Yeah, hard, and they just keep going.
Yeah. And Robin is great, but that white paper was like doesn't tell anything. Like,
well, he was in a completely different stage of his career, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I don't think he necessarily realized what was about to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
he was like
definitely.
fucking around. I mean, not really, but relative to what he's doing now, that was sort of the energy. Okay, so BitVM happens, you get nerd sniped,
Yes.
and you're like, we need to talk to Robin and we need to figure this out. Prior to that, again, just for clarity, I want to make sure everything's understood. The implementation, if you will, that you were kind of ideating on how you would do this would have been a more trusted system, is substantially more.
Yes.
So it wouldn't have been like, you didn't have ideas for like the real rollup yet. BitVM sort of opened up that possibility even. Okay.
We had very hard discussion on that with Ekrem. Like he was saying, okay, this is like half trusted. It's no different than side chains. And I was saying, look, we will find a way. Like
we'll find a way. We'll get the trustlessness.
Yeah, the BitVM paper was totally luck by then. Like we weren't expecting that kind of paper. We thought it's impossible, but maybe like one day there will be an opcode to enable CKPs, whatever. And the BitVM paper, it was the moment that we said, okay, now we actually can build whatever we want.
Wow. Okay, so you fly to Amsterdam and you meet Robin, and Robin and you sit down for 3 hours and like hammer it out?
Under the rain, we just caught him and like asked a bunch of questions.
Are you serious?
Yeah. It was Bitcoin Amsterdam. It was obviously raining.
He was probably swamped with his throngs of fans, and he's like, "Who are these guys?" Right? Like,
yeah, we have a very good picture. We gifted them our t-shirts, like merch, with Lucas and Robin. That time under the rain. It's a cool picture, like a good memory.
I love that. Okay, so this was we're talking maybe like a little under 2 years ago, kind of thing. I don't even remember. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So BitVM happens, you ask sorts of questions, and then you immediately just go into like building mode with BitVM.
We initially started like implementing only the BitVM itself. And I was like trying to come up with a bridge. Okay, how we can make this like a working bridge. And
Robin himself was still trying to figure that out at the time. I mean, this was unclear research for everyone at that time. Yeah. Okay. Were you chatting with other teams or other engineers, or was it just like you guys and like sometimes you'd ask Robin questions?
Back then, I think there wasn't any teams. Like obviously there was this famous Telegram group, BitVM Builders Chat. A lot of people like Bitcoin OGs asking questions, but literally no one knows how this works except Robin.
Yeah. And like maybe, like maybe like 2 of his friends who he was talking about it. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Okay.
So they built the first, like Super Testnet built like the JavaScript implementation of the paper. Back then.
The which, sorry, say that again?
Super Testnet.
No, but what did he do?
He implemented the paper in one programming language.
He did like a tic-tac-toe.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And then we said, okay, like this is good, but this is like just to show a demo.
Right.
And then let's write this in Rust, which is like more stable programming language that we also use in our stack. And then they built, I think it's like the only working implementation of BitVM besides what was released during the paper by Super Testnet. It still is, but it was very primitive version of BitVM in the paper.
And at that time, like the bridge design was also, it was like, we had the signs of trust minimized bridge. It was like working, but still a lot clunky. Like since it's BitVM 1, there's a lot of like challenge response going on. But like,
when did the challenge response games start? Like when did people start to think about like optimistic rollups? Like doing some sort of like optimistic verification as like a solution in this whole process? Was that before or after Robin?
I think it was in the BitVM paper.
It was in the BitVM paper. Okay. So you were like dancing with that whole how this is going to work, and people were sort of ironing out the details of how the optimistic verification will work. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, and then we started implementing the like first bridge kind of thing. We were still like researching how we can make this better. And then, I don't know, BitVM 2 came out at some point.
Yeah,
way later though, right?
Yeah, but people were still always improving on BitVM. Like the paper changed a lot since coming to BitVM 2.
Right.
BitVMX people came up and like they said, okay, let's do this. But we were even still contributing the BitVM 1 implementation in JavaScript. We allocated engineers to do it. And it changed to BitVM 2 at some point. The paper came much later, actually. The implementation started earlier than the paper on the BitVM 2. But there was a lot of things that we need to figure out. It's not just like how do you verify the proof on Bitcoin, but like Ekrem said, how we can make this a bridge, because it's not as simple as just verifying a proof. There's a lot of liquidity going on. Transactions need to be connected. How we can make it more scalable or practical, and how we can connect it with Citrea itself, because Citrea was still also work in progress product by then. It wasn't complete product. So these are like two different things. We started one, then we started the other, then we need to just connect these two things, right? So there was a lot of things that we should do. And meanwhile, the BitVM 2 came up and we started also contributing to that, etc.
Now there are like, 100 million, like everyone and their mother is like trying to build like a BitVM, whatever. But like back then, you guys must have been probably one of the first teams who were really like
Sure.
actively doing this. I mean, is that accurate?
Yeah, that's why people like called us a scam a lot of time.
Really?
Like,
Right, because they don't really know the difference.
yeah, we just like said, okay, we are like building a rollup on. We first introduced Citrea brand and the concept officially on February 6th last year. So I wrote a blog post with our marketing lead, basically describing what we want to build to mainnet. And then once we released it, people said, "Oh, BitVM is not yet ready yet. You are just like scamming people. You are fundraising, whatever, and blah blah." And we were basically describing our goal for mainnet because like that's how you do an announcement, right? You don't say we plan to do this, we will do this, like we will do this. You just say like, okay, we vision this, and then we will do this, like whatever it takes. Again, and then people think, okay, we are not kind of like good enough to build on BitVM, or
People
we
like,
don't
they
know
must be
anything about
bluffing.
BitVM. And then once we proved ourselves basically building the BitVM, toy BitVM implementation, we released the first ZK verifier on BitVM 1 as well. And then we built all this proof of concept. We were first to deploy BitVM on testnet in a proper setup on DevNet as well. So it's just like now I think we have enough respect on people, especially considering the BitVM as ZK efforts. But when we started, it was very challenging because literally no one else was building on BitVM. No one knew how to build on BitVM. We were almost, I think, the only one doing researching and implementing a proper way of building a rollup on Bitcoin.
Well, I mean, you clearly were getting respect from some of the right people very early on. I mean, you guys have some pretty impressive investors, including Joey Krug with Founders Fund. Was that a pivotal moment for you guys? I mean, how did that sort of shift things for you? And it sounds like one thing you've done incredibly well is fundraising.
Thank you. Yeah, I think during the seed round, it was Galaxy Digital who basically like led our round. It was a funny moment because it was our first external fundraise. Till then, we were just like getting our own revenue.
When was this, by the way? Like around what time were you like having serious investor conversations with people like at Galaxy?
I think 23 fall, 2023 fall.
Oh, really? So this was like like a year after Ordinals?
Yeah, okay. It was like almost a year after Ordinals.
And at that point, you really didn't have like a ton of competition. You were like one of the first people to really be like raising for this specific type of product.
And you think that's a good thing, but that's not.
Like, it wasn't helpful?
Believe me, you're talking to investor and they said, no, you cannot build a rollup on Bitcoin.
Right, they're like, it's impossible. Yeah, like, you must be full of shit.
Yeah, I'm saying like, we will. Like they say, no, you cannot. It's impossible. It was just like a lot of back and forth with investors because there's no competition, but it's like a very new design space.
They didn't believe you, basically.
Yeah, most of the investors said, okay, it's just like we don't know if Bitcoin L2 is going to be big, right? We still don't know. Like it's obviously like a very sensible reason, but back then there was literally nothing, like 10 Lightning and stacks maybe, and then so. The first round was a bit harder, but Galaxy probably like the best decision we made by getting them as like the lead investor in that round. And then, like you said,
when you say that was the best decision we made, like, was your competition, like, did you have like, people vying to invest in you that were like particularly competitive with Galaxy, or did Galaxy feel like the obvious choice?
There was a couple more investors that wanted to just like lead the round.
And that you felt like were serious contenders, because Galaxy is a great name.
Yes, not the name, but they have very unique position. They are very well connected in Bitcoin ecosystem, both to like the on-chain Bitcoiners and off-chain Bitcoiners, like the institutions, ETFs. They didn't exist
very
back
helpful.
then, but they had this kind of effect and the name, like you said. And they're also like the team, the ventures team, our lead Will. They're brilliant and they're helping on a lot of things. And then we got their fundraise. We launched the Citrea brand and then built the testnet. And then we got also another fundraise from Founders Fund, like you said.
Out of curiosity, like, did you think, I mean, just to sort of praise Galaxy a little bit in this, Did you feel like Galaxy really saw what you guys were doing because they had great technical analysts, like when maybe other funds don't? Was that the issue? Was that, the other folks that you were trying to fundraise from didn't really understand the tech as well?
Yeah. Do you want to go?
I think at that stage, like seed round, the investors mostly look at the team. Like, not project is also important, but I think the team is the most important thing at that stage.
And
What do you
the
think?
funny story that I think I never said publicly is basically our lead investor, Will, said, okay, guys, like, I really like what you do. And then tomorrow I'm flying to Istanbul, and then I will come see you in the office. And then he fly all the way from New York to Istanbul, come to the office, see our team. We had a like big team by then, I
Before he
think.
wrote the check, before he
Yeah.
decided to come in, he wanted to like see what was happening.
And there were like 10, I think, engineers in the office, and we took him like a good dinner. And the next day he was flying back to New York, and on the plane he sent offers.
So he came in for like a day to like just like scope it out. Did any other investors do that?
I don't think there's much investors in the space doing it, but this kind of like shows the conviction, because like Ekrem said, it's like a team can build anything if they have resources, and that's like more important than what you build, because if this doesn't work, we will just build another thing, right? That's like the most important thing, and I think it was important for them to like see it, and they see it, they've basically invested.
Well, it's funny because I interviewed Udi Wertheimer this morning, and I said, you've been, Taproot was just such a mysterious company, right? It's like, what are they building? Like, what are they doing? Like, nobody knows. And I said, how are you able to raise so much money when like no one really knows what the fuck you're doing, And he was like, trust, basically. Like, we are the super, super solid team. And that's what investors care about. So you're kind of validating that. It feels accurate. So then how did Founders Fund get involved?
It was last year, I think, when we did the round after our testnet launch.
So it was like a year later, basically, after the seed?
Around, I guess.
Okay.
Because we were just expanding the team very aggressively. We were growing a lot, like in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Before we released the Citrea brand, I was saying to people, okay, like, look, like 1 year later from now, people will talk about Bitcoin rollups. Because when we started, there was only one research on Bitcoin rollups by John Light, on like a research from HRF. And I said, okay, like, look, people will talk about Bitcoin rollups 1 year later from now. And it actually happened. Once we launched, there were a lot of like other Bitcoin L2s claimed to be rollup, whatever. But people actually put, like, if you go to like this conference now, you will see a lot of people talking about rollups in their presentation. Now it's become a thing on Bitcoin. That moment we knew, okay, we need to just like expand more the team, because we need more engineering resources. We will do audits, we will go to mainnet. And then we realized, okay, it's time to maybe do another fundraising round.
All right, guys, I want to take a quick break to thank you for watching and remind you to click the follow button on my profile if you'd like more Bitcoin technical deep dives like this. I also want to give a shout out to my partners for making the show possible. Best in Slot and Unisat are, of course, co-maintainers of the BRC20 protocol. They are working on some incredible updates to BRC20, including the BRC20 programmability module designed by Best in Slot, which is currently in testnet. This will make execution of smart contracts for BRC20 possible at the indexer level, which is about as trustless and Bitcoin native as it gets. Unisat is also working on a single-step transfer function for BRC20, which I know many of you will be excited about. That's been widely requested by the BRC20 community. And last but not least, my incredible Layer 2 partner, Citrea, who I couldn't be more excited about teaming up with. Citrea is working on one of the leading implementations of a BitVM zero-knowledge proof-style bridge, an execution environment for Bitcoin. So they're essentially building what I think could become the canonical Bitcoin rollup, and they have an absolutely incredible team of people backing them up and getting really creative about how to push this technology forward. So in my opinion, once we have a truly trust-minimized bridge, anything is possible for Bitcoin. So I'm very grateful to Citrea for their work and for supporting the show. Let's get back to it. I've offered this on other episodes, but just so like folks who are listening who might not be clear on these definitions know, could you give a little definition of what a real rollup is?
Yes. Do you want to do? Or I mean, I think we have different
Ekrem, go
opinions.
for it. I'm calling on you.
Okay. For me, the real rollup would be if the data is on the L1. So the definition of rollup for me is like batching transactions and then putting it on the L1, in this case, Bitcoin. So I would say what makes a rollup is the data being on chain. And that's it.
That's it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
That's a pretty similar definition. I had Giannis answer that question the other day. It was pretty insane. But I think it's just helpful if we're going to talk about rollups, like let's just define that really quickly. So basically, and this is not easy to do on Bitcoin. And
there are a lot of nuances. Like if you basically just put the data, it's not enough. Bitcoin's block space is limited. If you compress it, then you need ZK. You need to do state diffs. And the bridge is also like a case where like if it's you need to have a trust minimized bridge. Then you need to read the data on Bitcoin. To be able to read the data on Bitcoin, you need to have a way to just like prove it, blah, blah. It's like there are a lot of nuances, but the main...
Or just like simple definition, very difficult implementation, maybe is like a strong way to say that.
Yeah. And also I would say like if your data is not on Bitcoin, then it's like not a rollup. It's just you trust where the data is.
Right. Kind of, which is... Some people are going that way in the BitVM bridging space, right? And this is something that is a little bit perhaps unique to you guys. So not everyone who is doing BitVM bridges is committed to necessarily making sure that all of the data from whatever the execution environment is that they're bridging is going to be on layer one. You guys were committed to that from day one?
Because the best thing, yes. And also the best thing is if you're doing this, you can have all the security assumptions of Bitcoin. And this is like a huge thing. Like, obviously like there are a lot of things like sequencer, like forced transactions, but after you have that, after you have the Bitcoin level security, then it's a valuable thing, I would say.
Were you ever tempted to like cut corners around this, or to just take the attitude we'll figure it out?
Yeah, we just like our mindset is always okay, we will build something that also gives users options, but that's like a very long-term goal, right? So right now, what we see in the market is demand for Bitcoin security, not the BTC asset security like maybe Babylon or Bitcoin staking, but the network itself's security.
That's very well put. That's what the market is demanding right now. That is what I am certainly observing. And it sounds like that's what you guys observe too.
Yes. And then we said, okay, we will just build this. Maybe in the future, we have like alternative or extensions to Citrea where people can use other DA layers or like off-chain DA to have less, like maybe cheaper transactions or faster transactions, whatever. But this has we think like obviously a clear market demand. And that's what we try to build for the last 2 years.
Okay. So you're working with Robin, you're building this implementation. You guys are part of the BitVM Alliance, right?
Yes, we are one of the
How
founding
has
members.
that process been for you? Like kind of working together? Where does that work end and Citrea's sort of unique implementation of the bridge begin?
So BitVM Alliance, I feel like we will all need a way to verify ZK proof on Bitcoin. So why not we build a primitive altogether? And then it's been very productive, I would say, with like, 5 companies. There has been a lot of good contributions from other teams. We made some good contributions and we built it. I think that's the way to do. If there's one primitive that will be helpful for everyone. Otherwise, like if everyone was working on their own BitVM implementation, that would be like 5 different BitVM implementations.
It's inefficient.
Yeah,
also.
It's inefficient for a primitive like this.
Right. But so, I mean, how difficult would it be to explain to the layman who might be watching, okay, like this is what we're building with BitVM, and this is where like, okay, now Citrea is like on its own and has to figure out what to build around that ZKP.
So yeah, a BitVM is essentially a Bitcoin script that can verify a ZK proof. And building a bridge around this, it's much different. And every team has their own trade-offs. Some teams are not building a Bitcoin rollup. Some teams are like building bridges for Ethereum. So like, but they all need this core primitive. And then all the bridges around that, it's like there are some trade-offs. That's another engineering and research problem. BitVM is also another engineering and research problem. So as a BitVM Alliance, we finished this, and now all the other teams in the Alliance are figuring out doing this bridge thing.
Are there like, what do you think are like the biggest challenges that you're facing right now on the technical side that you're kind of attacking at the moment with the most fervor?
Biggest challenge of building a bridge?
Either. let's go. We could do the bridge or we could do BitVM. Your choice.
So there's no challenge on the BitVM side.
That's good.
Yeah, we have implemented it. Yeah, it's done. Now it's getting audited. Maybe the challenge would be if there is a malicious thing. So in the BitVM, the disproved transactions are huge. They're like 4 megabytes. So that might be a challenge to send that 4 megabyte transaction. But in the optimistic case, we won't need to do that. So it's a good thing. For the bridge side, the most challenging, there was two challenges. I've spent like months or like more than a year on this. One is collateral efficiency. So since these disproved transactions are huge, there needs to be a way to fund them. And then if you do that for every deposit, it's not efficient anymore. So yeah, I've been thinking about this. And the other challenge is the Bitcoin Lite client on Bitcoin. So since we are Rollup, all of our data is on Bitcoin. So we need a way to read the Bitcoin, right? If we can read Bitcoin, then we can prove something about Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can prove something about Bitcoin...
On the layer 2, basically.
On BitVM, I would say.
Okay.
On BitVM, we want to prove something about Citrea and Bitcoin. And since all the Citrea's data is on Bitcoin, if we can prove something about Bitcoin, then we can also prove something about Citrea.
Oh, I see.
So the problem comes down to how we can know Bitcoin, how Bitcoin knows itself.
Right, it's like kind of like introspection-ish.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it basically is.
Yeah,
a version of it. Yeah.
That was the biggest challenge.
Did you solve for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We recently released a paper on it.
Really?
Called like Clementine white paper, generally.
Oh, nice.
But it's
Clementine is the name of our bridge. So yeah, the BitVM 2 paper.
That's actually a helpful thing also, is like the difference between Citrea and Clementine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you just quickly TLDR?
Citrea is the rollup itself, the whole project. Okay. Clementine is the bridge.
Modular bridge piece.
Yes.
Have you guys ever thought about offering the modular bridge piece as a separate product?
No.
Why?
I think it's a big distraction.
Oh, interesting.
I know some teams want to do it, but we are building an infrastructure, but we don't want to be like an infrastructure company. I think there's more value. The core value is applications, right? If we build Citrea and if there's no unique applications that we can offer to Bitcoiners, then we just spent like 2-3 years.
But if you have a modular bridge, you don't have to build like a whole ecosystem from scratch. You can just plug into existing ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's the easy. Well, but is it just easy or is it functional? Is this a debate that you guys have had?
Not a debate, but we know teams doing it, so we said, okay, like why they're doing it?
Like why compete? Like there's like if they're doing it, then we should do our own full.
I think it wasn't a comparison, but we said, okay, I think this like easy way, because like getting together an ecosystem is very, very hard.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
Like that's why I'm like, this is an ambitious thing to do. I understand why people want to offer the bridge modularly. It makes sense to me. But I guess you guys are like,
yeah, because like I can just talk to like one of the other chains trying to build Bitcoin layer 2, and we understand each other, right? We are like engineers, we know low level stuff. I can just sell them a bridge, but that's not the biggest. That's not our vision. Our vision is to just like sell this idea of building for Bitcoiners to application developers, which speak from another language. They want to see demand, they want to see functionality, they want to see UX, they want to offer this to Bitcoiners. And that's like more hard to convince them to build something on Citrea. But that's like where the most value lies. Because if you have like thousands of Bitcoin L2s with 0 applications, it's just like waste of time for everyone. But what we try to do is just like have a single Bitcoin L2 and have a lot of applications on it so that it can be actually useful for people in this conference room.
But the modular bridges theoretically would bridge into ecosystems that do have a lot of applications, right? So it's not like we're talking about a world where there's no applications. So what about the building your own ecosystem and actually like getting builders to come and use your ecosystem felt like compelling enough that you're willing to do all that work to get people to use your layer 2, your execution environment that you build, rather than like making these, helping other ecosystems with applications that already exist on them just be more trustless?
Yes. So it's, I think, a UX problem, and it's like an audience problem, right? There's a lot of DeFi applications on Ethereum that's very, very valuable as a primitive. But in order to use them, what you need to do is go to their webpage, download a MetaMask wallet, set up your seed phrase, set up your RPCs, load some ETH in it, or maybe Bitcoin in the future. Maybe they will support if with this modular bridges. And they need to open that ugly DeFi UI that people know. Like I'm used to it. I can use it very easily. But you just like think a Bitcoiner you see in the conference you talk to doesn't know anything about crypto, only have Bitcoin and want to utilize their Bitcoin. If you just say them, okay, use this modular bridge to go to Ethereum and then use the DeFi app there, it will be very, very painful for them. And that app they don't target Bitcoiners. So they don't build experiences for Bitcoiners. They build experiences for DeFi natives, degens, meme coin traders. And that's not the audience we are building for. We are building for Bitcoiners. So our applications should be built for Bitcoiners.
Oh,
They should
interesting.
offer better experience to Bitcoiners, better on-ramps, better off-ramps, ease of use, because people in this room, in this conference, they didn't use any other crypto,
So
any
true.
chain. So they don't know how to use an EVM chain, even though the bridge is modular and have Bitcoin, right?
So true.
So that's why we want to do this.
And in this
ecosystem
context,
thing.
when you say users, you mean developers.
I mean both. Like the developers will build the applications for users,
right?
But users themselves also like they are the key.
But users themselves are not like they're not the ones who are gonna be using the bridge, right? I mean, like I guess they're just gonna think, but to your point, this is what I'll back up for a second. This is what I'm hearing is that if we just bridged into some like Solana layer or whatever that had Solana weird like degen applications on it as they currently exist, Bitcoiners would not appreciate that. Like they're not going to be into that.
Not appreciation, but just they won't be able to use it.
It's
because
like
they don't know
friction.
how to use
they don't
it.
understand it. It's like outside of their worldview.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. That's a really interesting perspective. Okay, so your point of view is like, we don't just want to build the bridge. The bridge is not what's the only thing that matters here. What also matters is building an execution environment that it's like friendly to Bitcoiners.
They're just like very symbiotic. We don't diverge themselves. Like it's just like they are the same thing for us. We built the bot for the same vision.
Do you see folks from Ethereum who are actually like DeFi native users, like defecting and using Citrea in a world where like there are trustless Bitcoin bridges?
Yes. So the one point is like we talked when we went to like an Ethereum conference, I think later last year was we meet with a lot of OG Ethereum people, and we obviously know them because of our ZK background and privacy backgrounds. But one unique thing about them is they're all OG Bitcoiners. Like Vitalik is the OG Bitcoiner.
Yeah.
He was the founder of Bitcoin magazine. He founded Ethereum. Now he's like an Ethereum Maxi, whatever you call. But he was an OG Bitcoiner. And on Ethereum land on Solana, there are a lot of people who hold Bitcoin. Like in crypto, I think people holding other assets, but not Bitcoin, is very, very low. So all of these people, what you call their tribe is whatever, but they have Bitcoin. And if you can build applications that they can utilize their Bitcoin, they can use their Bitcoin just like they use their Ethereum or Solana, why wouldn't they, right? That's like the whole thing. All these Ethereum people, they previously use Bitcoin, most of them, even not, they have Bitcoin sitting in their ledger, sitting in their Binance account, whatever, but they like using Ethereum, so why they just don't pull their Bitcoin from their ledger to on-chain and then use on Citrea?
It makes sense to me.
I want to add
Ekrem,
something here as well. Like there's currently more than $10 billion worth of wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum. So yeah, Ethereum people want to use Bitcoin on DeFi, but some like there's trust included in wrapped BTC. So I believe like we are solving that problem. We are solving that trust problem, and the BTC on Citrea is much more secure than wrapped BTC. So it will like users of wrapped BTC would probably hopefully come to the Citrea.
That is the hope. Yeah, that is the holy grail. So want to kind of circle back to what we were asking about. Like, okay, so you have the BitVM Alliance, you have the actual like BitVM implementation, and then you have the bridge. And this is sort of like the core distinction where the BitVM Alliance ends and Citrea begins. there's a lot of interesting creative. I mean, and you are not collaborating with non-Citrea engineers on the bridge, really. It sounds like this is where independent teams kind of go into their separate corners and are kind of effectively competing. Yeah. And you all are doing interesting, new, creative things, out of your own imaginations to make these bridges work. One of the interesting things that you have done, or creative things you've done, is sort of using non-standard transactions to accomplish certain goals in bridging. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So before that, I want to say, like, in the BitVM Alliance group, we were always like sharing our ideas. Although we were competitors, like, we were like, oh, I found this trick. What do you think? Like, some teams, they're sending their tricks.
You brainstorm about stuff outside of it.
Yeah.
Okay. You're mutually supportive.
On the bridge side, the problem was I was always looking at RepBTC's data. So RepBTC, for to be able to allow this much liquidity, there needs to be like 100,000 withdrawals needs to be possible with this bridge. So I was always aiming for that. But when I do
that was the goal, is you need to be able to service 100,000 withdrawals.
Yeah, minimum 100,000 withdrawals.
That's like your scalability number, basically, that you're working with.
At minimum, not the
minimum,
like the ceiling, but the minimum.
Okay.
Yeah, and
in a certain time period, 100,000 withdrawals, like not per block. No,
all time. Like perpetual thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like at some point there's some limitations with BitVM bridges where the bridge can pre-sign. So BitVM bridges work with pre-signed transactions, and those pre-signed transactions happen at the deposit time. So at some point, the bridges can run out of pre-signed transactions, so it can stop. So we want to make it long-lasting and then support 100,000 withdrawals. But to do so, we had to have UTXOs per the pre-signed transaction. And when you do the calculation, because of the dust limit on Bitcoin, when you sum the 100,000 UTXO and 330 sats, it becomes a lot of collateral. Like the operators,
it adds up. The dust adds up.
It adds up a lot. So yeah, the initial collateral requirement was like around 100 Bitcoin. So and it's barely allowing 100,000 withdrawals.
Wow. So if you wanted to go to 200,000 withdrawals, you're talking about 200 Bitcoin worth of collateral that's needed right up front to make the bridge functional.
Yeah. So I was wrapping my head around on this, like how we can solve this. And at some point, I realized you cannot standardly, like in a standard transaction, you cannot create a zero sat output. But you can spend it.
Right.
You can spend zero sat outputs, and it's a standard transaction. But you cannot create it.
Wait. Back up. I want to make sure I understand this. So you can spend a zero sat output, but you just can't relay it to the network. That's what I understood.
No. You can relay a transaction that is spending a zero sat output in a standard way, but you cannot create zero sat outputs
in a standard
way. In a standard way.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so this is a nuanced detail, of the whole conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. But is there functionally a difference? I mean, that practically creates the same problem, right? If you have to create the transactions, right?
But the good thing is, like, if you make the non-standard transactions non-time sensitive, but so like in BitVM bridges, there are some transactions that are time sensitive because like they have time locks. Like in 1 week, you need to send this transaction. If they're non-standard, it's a problem because you have to agree with a miner. Currently, there's only Slipstream that accepts non-standard transactions. So if they shut off their service, now you cannot send it, and that means the bridge can stop.
And the time sensitivities, like, limits are like pretty strict. Like, what, an hour? Like, what does time sensitive mean? Like, it has to happen.
It's just like any time. Like, there's a limit. There's a finite limit on the time that you could send the transactions.
Right. But like Slipstream, for instance, like they hit like on average 7 blocks a day.
Yeah,
so
but
like you have a sense.
It's a trust assumption.
Yeah, what if
it's
Slipstream
a trust
stops?
assumption? That's right. That makes sense.
What if Slipstream stops? Like, then
right, you're dependent on like a very centralized entity.
Exactly.
Right. We don't want this. We want to go beyond Slipstream and private mempools. Okay.
Yeah. So then I realized, okay, we can make this zero sat outputs, but we can make them non-time sensitive. But the good thing is like you can spend them in a standard way, so those transactions can be time sensitive. And there was another issue where...
But you needed, and again, let me back up for a second. This is where you needed a relay policy change. Did you approach the Bitcoin core dev team and ask them to make a change? No. This was just like you were fucking around and you happened to talk to Antoine at a conference about this.
This was even like another problem, not even related to this specific non-standard transaction, right?
Oh, these are like separate. I thought it was that it wasn't the dust limit that, that was okay. That was different. Different. Okay, fine. Okay, so the dust limit. So continue, yes.
But yeah, so there was another problem where, okay, you can spend zero set outputs. It's a standard transaction, but the issue is that transaction needs to pay fees. A zero fee transaction cannot go to Bitcoin before Bitcoin Core version 29. I will get into that. Yeah, so yeah, you're only spending zero set outputs, but this transaction doesn't pay fees. So I was also wrapping my head around this, like how I can do this. And I realized there is this PR got merged in the Bitcoin Core ephemeral anchors, ephemeral dust, which allows this. You can create a zero set output, zero set anchor output that doesn't have keys, but you need to spend that in a child transaction in the same block.
There you go.
With that, it was possible to spend it was possible to send a transaction that has only zero set inputs. Then I immediately, okay, I need to try this. I need to try if this works. I went to Slipstream, created some zero set outputs. I created this transaction, and I upgraded my Bitcoin node to version 29. It was before release. I tried this transaction and it worked. It was in my mempool. So I was okay, that's great. We can propagate these. It looks weird in the mempool space. It's spending 2 zero set and creating 1 zero set outputs, but it works.
And you okay. So, and then did you use Truck for this at all?
Yeah, it's Truck. Yeah,
it is Truck, right? Okay, that's what. Okay, okay, interesting. And so then there was another example of non-standardness that you were playing around with that did get the attention of the Bitcoin core developers, not because you approached them, but this was just something that sort of came up organically. Can you share a little bit about that?
So, actually, before that, I was telling Bitcoin core devs like, okay, I'm like the protocol is like have 1,000 outputs, zero set outputs, but like I was telling only about zero set outputs we create, and they were interested. And at some point, I said like, okay, we also have this transaction, which is the Watchtower Challenge transaction, which has 80 bytes of op return and 2 unspendable outputs to just write like ZK proof, yeah. Because like these ZK proofs, they're small. They're like 144 bytes, really small. But the issue is op return doesn't allow it. Like op return only allows 80 bytes of arbitrary data.
How many bytes did you need again? Say that again.
144 bytes.
Oh, so close.
Like an extra
so
64.
Close.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay.
And this will only happen in the pessimistic case if there's a challenge.
Right.
And I didn't even
It's rare. It's not even.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen that often. But if it happens, you need a little bit more data space than the current standard op return limit allows. So Antoine was like, "No big deal. We'll just like expand it a teeny tiny bit for this like very rare situation that could potentially unlock trustless bridging."
Yeah, but the thing, like Antoine said, like there is a use. Antoine realized like there is a use case for larger op returns, and that, I mean, there's no need to have that limit if you think about it, because if you want to put arbitrary data on Bitcoin, you can already use inscriptions, and it's 4 times cheaper.
Like why would you like spam op returns that are like so expensive to use? Like the incentives are not there. Yeah.
And if you have the limit that incentivize protocol builders like us to create unspendable outputs, and
put them through private mempools like Slipstream.
Or
which is, I think, the real, I mean, in my opinion, is the real issue.
It's harmful.
It's harmful. It's actively harmful. Yeah.
You either depend on larger op returns relaying through centralized mining services, or you create unspendable outputs, which bloats the UTXO set. So both ways are harmful. in some
It's
sense.
interesting because one of the many things I heard during this debate. So he initially, like, the attempt was to just like lift the limitation entirely.
Mhm.
There were other people who were like, oh, why not just like make the limit 160 or whatever? But that's like arbitrary. That would really look like it was just
Yeah.
like favoring you guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that would be like
Yeah.
very weird.
Yeah, the thing is, like, Ekrem messaged me on that day that he talked with Antoine and said, like, okay, I think they might think about like removing the OP return limit because it doesn't actually change anything in the consensus level. And I said, I just put an emoji like laughing. That's all. And the next day he sent the mailing list, said, okay, they're serious. That's good. And apparently I just like was very busy. And then apparently Peter Todd just picked it up and opened a PR that we had no idea that it opens till someone tagged James Rollup and us saying
So
that
you wrote the PR. It
No,
wasn't
no,
Antoine.
Peter
No.
Todd.
Peter. Oh, that's right. That's right. Peter Todd wrote the PR to lift the limitation.
Mhm.
Yes.
And
we
he
weren't
had
aware of
already
it.
proposed this at some point in the past.
like a year ago, I guess, or two.
Yeah.
Do you know why, or like, can you give the TLDR on his reasoning for why he wanted to lift the op return limit 2 years ago?
The same thing. It's just like people can still use it, even though you don't just lift the limits. And it causes harm because it causes minor centralization. And that makes your node worse on fee estimation. That makes your node, if you're a miner, makes worse for just syncing blocks. So it just like makes things work, makes things worse in
He
general.
foresaw what could come,
Yes.
what could happen when no one else like imagined this situation, basically.
Yes. And then he opened the PR again that we had no idea that the PR is opened. We weren't checking like the Bitcoin course. No one said anything to us till all the drama happened on Twitter. And then we found ourselves in like the middle of discussion that we had no intention to create. I support it. I support lifting the OP return limit, but we weren't even aware that's going to happen.
You never
That's the thing.
spoke to Peter Todd about this, right? Do you
No.
know why Peter Todd, of all people? I mean, I guess Antoine. The only
Yeah.
person that you spoke to was Antoine, and it was like a casual passing conversation at a
Mhm,
conference where he like had this download and realized what was happening.
Mhm.
But then you never spoke to any other Bitcoin core devs after that.
Yeah, never. He said like, okay, I'll wait for your white paper and then like put it on mailing. Like, I wait for your. He said I will wait for your white paper because our white paper is an example of a usage of larger op returns. It's just an
Right.
example. He already was
He
thinking.
wanted to see like who needs this and why.
Yeah, like he was already thinking like the limit should be removed, but us we were just one single example.
You brought a real use case
Yeah.
for the like removal of the limitation, like real reason, a practical reason.
The thing is like we don't need it. A lot of people don't realize this. Like we don't need larger op returns. It's slightly good for us. Like and I personally don't want to create any unspendable outputs, but
You have another way of doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't need this to have, there's no like incentive for you to be like threatening Bitcoin core developers or like all of these other like weird accusations that are
Yeah.
happening.
No,
Yeah.
like if we want, we could do the worst way, which is making this large OP return, getting a deal with Slipstream or whatever, like
Right.
whoever is providing, and just pay them more fees and get the transaction mines, and they become rich, and other miners get less fees. That's like the worst way of doing it.
Right.
We said, okay, this is like maybe a trade-off. We do this in a like good way for miner decentralization, but obviously a bad way for nodes. But there's no third way. Like there's just like two options you have.
This is the core thing I want people to take away from this episode is like understanding that like if op return limits like continue at this pace, there's just incentive, whether it's with you guys or anyone else, right? I mean, it's not even just a you specific problem. Private mempools are going to be used to do
Mhm.
these activities. And that is like a way bigger problem than like the limitation on the op returns. So yeah. Wow. So were you guys surprised by the drama that ensued?
I was really surprised. I wasn't expecting this much drama.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm like the usual communicator of the team to the outside. So I've spent like days and nights on Twitter for like random people that didn't even like read the white paper or the mailing list.
Right.
Or
They
the
have no
PR.
idea.
They just like see some people angry to us on Twitter and they become angry. Like what is that? Like
Did you try to like engage with these people? Like
I
how did
think
you
I did
manage
it like
it?
the first time. Like the first night I replied to someone and I realized, okay, it's just waste of time.
Yeah.
Because literally like if you read the white paper or the mailing list, you understand what's going on. But if you don't, no one can save you, right? And then at that point, okay, I said like, then I will just like create a thread of education that says like what's bad about minor sanitization. I create like 4 or 5 tweets about it, specifically like focusing on what would happen if the mempool policy, all the rules are a subset of the consensus rules instead of being equal. And people obviously I think liked this or just shared it, DM'd me, whatever, but it's just like a very become like an ideological thing. It's not about
Yeah.
education, or it's not about like people don't read anything or like don't get interested. It's just like a politics game in like a real world, right? There's some couple sides that pushes something to their audience because they want to stay where they are, and then people, it's easy to believe than doing research and like reading or developing.
So
So
it's interesting you say you don't think it's necessarily an educational problem because you think people effectively are like closed-minded, right? Like people want to believe
it's the
what
nature
their
of human.
heroes believe or what they're told to buy from their person that they
It's not
trust or whatever.
blaming. It's just like how, as a human, we are, right? We always want to believe in something. And if the guy that is angry to Citrea is what you want to believe, that you just believe that. It's not like a bad thing or blaming. It's just like how human nature works. And it's fine. Like we don't care, or it doesn't affect anything to protocol, to ourselves, to the team. We just like keep building what we like to build.
It kind of reminds me of Casey, honestly, right? Like when Casey was like getting all this vitriol for ordinals, it's like, okay, what are you going to do about it? You know what I mean? Like it really just doesn't matter because this is a permissionless network unless you're going to like, advocate for some hard fork or something. Like you can just fuck off, like,
That's true.
Interesting. Did you like feel like you learned anything particular? This is like maybe because you're relatively young in this industry relative to a lot of builders. This was like your big first Bitcoin governance political upheaval.
It happened before. Not governance, but it happened like when we released the BitVM stuff and like we released the Citrea. We like drama.
Yeah.
So no issues on that.
You're
I like
down for the fight.
Yeah. I like talking with people as long as it's like peaceful and I feel like we are exchanging information rather than just like blindly fighting. I find it very, very valuable.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Anything else that you kind of want people to take away from this episode? Because this is the episode where we're kind of getting into some of the nitty gritty of the op return. I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people this week, but not in this much depth on this topic, which is appropriate for you guys. Is there anything else that you want people to understand about this like mini op return drama from your perspective, whether that's like on the governance side, philosophically, technically? Like, what do you want people to know that you think maybe people might be confused about with regard to this op return drama?
I just want people to know that I don't want to create any unspendable outputs. I don't want to create any zero set outputs, but I'm trying to build a really secure bridge, trust minimized bridge, and like in that specific Watchtower challenge transaction, it was before using this specific transaction, it was that the size of that transaction was around 8,000 V bytes, which was expensive for us. And at some point, I found, okay, we can use op return and unspendable outputs. It was like 30 times cheaper. So I didn't even think about, okay, unspendable outputs, it's harmful. But yeah, I don't want to do it. But to build this trust minimized bridge, I have to. Or if we remove the limits, then it will be better for us. Not so bad, not much better, but slightly better. And I feel better, good about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like Ekrem said, the main problem with Bitcoin today is it's just like there are two sides of camp, maybe a lot of sides of side of camps, but like one side is just like people using custodians today. They buy ETFs, they buy MicroStrategy shares, and then they ask for proof of reserves. What, you can just like hold your Bitcoin, right? But I also understand this is very hard to do. Like holding your own Bitcoin is not easy. It's when I like first got into Bitcoin space, it was very hard. I download the wallet, which was extremely ugly. Like it's built like 30 years ago. I don't know. Like it was that ugly. And then I couldn't even like properly use it, even though I'm an engineer. I did like development before, whatever. And what we try to do is first improve this experience through Citrea. People can build applications. People are building applications that just scans your Face ID and signs a transaction. That's literally only possible on Citrea with this level of trust assumption, which is very, very minimized compared to Bitcoin. There's a team building it. There's a team building Bitcoin-backed loans with smart contracts, so no one can just like take your Bitcoin and hypothecate it and like give it to some other lender, whatever. And these are the use cases that we are bringing to Bitcoin to save Bitcoin from custodians and wrappers and centralized exchanges, and just improve the security of these layer 2s in the space, improve the usability of Bitcoin, and bring activity back to Bitcoin. Last year, Coinbase and Binance did more fees in Bitcoin pairs than Bitcoin miners in total. This is like a very bad thing. Like people doesn't even like buy and sell Bitcoin on Bitcoin. They just go to exchange to do it, and exchange gets all the fees. But what we can do is just bring all the trades on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin itself is getting money from getting traded. That's how it should be. And we are trying to fix it. And all we do is to just make it better and fix those issues.
I think these are like such incredibly important points. I mean, this is like, to me, this is like the crux of the argument, or like the biggest challenge with like the Knots crew or whatever, is this sort of misunderstanding. I think many people think about, arbitrary data on Bitcoin and they think about monkey pictures. And it's like, no, you guys, we're trying to build a solution that will actually make Bitcoin permissionless for 8 billion people. Right now, that is not the case. We're looking at like Bitcoin as an asset with like no permissionlessness. We've got BlackRock's going to be our best L2 if we don't fix this problem. And like you're standing in the way of that solution because of like some like weird like concern that you have about like monkey pictures that really have nothing to do with what's going on. This is like the key thing. I don't know. I told Ekrem this story at Bitcoin Plus Plus, but I don't know if you know the story. So I was at the Texas Energy and Mining Summit before Bitcoin Plus Plus, and Luke Dash Jr. was speaking, and he was speaking to a very, Knots friendly audience. I mean, it was mostly like his people in the audience. And I happened to be there. I'm, working closely with Mara, and I was at the Texas Energy and Mining Summit. And, Luke did his whole thing, and literally he just kept calling it spam. Like he just wouldn't even, it was just spam, right? There was no arbitrary data. They're using data. It was like the language was so over the top, like biased is a light word to say it. It was like propaganda, right? Like it read to me like propaganda. Refused to call this data anything other than spam. Yeah. And I, raised my hand and I asked, like, do you think that, building towards trustless bridging and actually like making scaling happen is a worthwhile venture, and that maybe there's a trade-off here to be made. And he actually said, of course, he gave his sort of like diplomatic answer. He said, yeah, of course, I think that's like a worthy venture, but like they could have done it a different way, or, whatever the fuck he said. But I to me, that is what I am not hearing enough of on Twitter, is like people understanding like this is not a monkey picture issue.
Like one example I gave on Twitter was just like in the size of one Bitcoin transaction, you could do 20 to 30 transactions on Citrea. So it's like 20 to 30x compression just for payments. I'm not talking about applications, stable coins, but it's like sending Bitcoin to someone. And you can improve it by 20 to 30x. And I said to him, Max, and he said 20x is not good enough.
Luke said that?
No, someone else. Then build like a better version of it.
Right,
like,
come on, bro.
Yeah, I'm saying 20 to 30x improvement, and people don't like it. Oh, Rollups just like 20 to 30 is not good. If you need 100x, okay, build it. Like, but no one is building it.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's just talking about it. But anyways, it's just like any kind of financial transactions that touches to Bitcoin. That's what happens on Citrea, and that data is the data of this financial transactions that's touching to Bitcoin one way or another.
Exactly. I think this is the perfect kind of like reference back to what we were saying. And I think something that makes you guys successful, right? Like one of the reasons I think you guys are doing so well is like there are a lot of people in the space who just want to be critical rather than build.
Yeah.
And
being bearish is easy.
Being bearish is easy. That's a great way to put it. And you guys, in some ways, I feel like you take the complete opposite approach of like, we'll figure it out. I'm going to put like Orkun. We'll figure it out. Orkun. That's the new tagline. We'll figure it out. Orkun. Yeah. So
they're always bullish on everything Bitcoin.
Amen. Thank you so much for coming. This was really, really fun. And I just appreciate you guys so much.
Thanks for having us.
Congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
Thank you.